guys good up in the front row? Checking it. Louise, you good? Okay. Now, I know the print is small. Don't worry about the print. Right away you're thinking, he was so good on the slides, but now this slide, the print is small, and the coffee's not that good. Who cares? Just kidding. What I want you to think about doing, forget about these numbers up here. Don't even worry about them. What I want you to think about doing on each one of these deals, as you diligently are writing down these numbers, on each one of these deals, is I want you to put together a worksheet. Either the green sheet, or what we know today as the sheet, or a pencil and a piece of paper, or a pen and piece of paper, and I want you to write down things like after repair value. I want you to write down things like rehab costs, purchasing costs, closing and holding costs, so you have an idea of what your total costs are with the property.
Over how long?
When you go to buy it. So you're going to buy it, you're going to have closing costs, and you're going to have repair costs over maybe a year or 2 years, however long it's going to take you to rehab that property. You're going to fix the time. Some of your projects may take you 2 months, some may take you 2 years. Whatever's appropriate to you, right? Does that make sense?
And we're still talking about rehab.
We're still talking about rehab time, absolutely. Okay? And then I want you to get an idea of your estimated profit. How much you're going to make on the deal. Again, don't worry about the figures up there, but just get an idea. Work it on paper, work it on pencil. Then put it on the sheet, or if you're more comfortable working the green sheet, that's fine as well. Property evaluator. Just make sure that you're going through this. You have to look at a deal and say, okay, if I'm looking at, matter of fact, I'm going to go on the previous slide so you stop trying to write down the numbers. When I'm looking at a deal, in my mind, I'm envisioning, okay, I can buy this for $60,000. I'm going to walk around the property. I'm going to get estimates, perhaps. I'm going to have my team go through it. And I know if I put $20,000 into this property, it'll be worth, after repair value, $130,000. In my mind, I know that, but I want to work it out. I want to write it out on paper. I want to make sure all my I's are dotted, T's are crossed, kind of thing. You should be going through this with each one of your deals. Each one of your deals, so that you understand your profit. Now, this is on the rehabbing side of things. You should also understand that, hey, if I'm going to buy and hold, rehab, buy and hold, or buy, rehab, and hold, I want to have an idea of, I'm buying it at a certain price, I've got closing costs, I'm going to rehab it, and then I'm going to rent it out. Is the money that I'm putting into this property, buy, closing cost, rehab, going to allow me to have the property cash flow for me by the rents that are coming in? You've got to go through that in your head. Remember, there's two paths. There's cash flow and there's value. I want you to go down the path of value and figure all those figures out. I want you to go down the path of cash flow and figure all those values out. It's very important that you do that. And it should take you a few moments to do that, okay? The initial point of looking at a property. Now, you might come back later and get some more detail to it, but that's what I want you to do when you're starting to look at a property, okay? When you're looking, don't just look at the aesthetics, look at the numbers in your mind as you're walking through there.
Now, this is before you're putting in the offer, correct?
This is before you're putting in the offer. Like every time I walked, or we stopped at a property, I got out, I use my iPad quite a bit, I take a picture of it, and I might take a note or two on there. I always take, by the way, just so that you know, can I borrow this, Marco? Yeah. I stop at a property, I get out, I take a picture of it. And then I will put the MLS listing underneath my iPad. I'll take a picture of that. This now becomes a PDF file. I happen to keep it in Evernote. But I've got all the information right there. Then I can take specific notes on it. But after I do that, as I'm walking around, I'm looking at things that are going to cost me with regard to rehab. For instance, we had, who was I walking around with the property on the corner? It was on the corner. It had the, okay, we were walking around and I was talking about things that are going to cost you money. Like for instance, immediately I look at the foundation of the property. When I look at the foundation, I often look at how the water is handled or managed on the property. At every property, I want to know, do they have gutters? If they have gutters, Do the gutters just drain to the ground at the foundation of the house, or is it actually being drawn away from the house? If you'll notice on that house, when we walked around the corner, all the water gathered on the roof and came to the corner of the property and landed on the ground, and the integrity of the fence was being damaged by that water. In other words, they're not directing that water in a direction away from that house. That's going to cost you money in the long term. That roof was pretty jacked up as well. Okay, so in my mind, that's about an $8,000 repair, maybe even closer to 10 if we took a closer look at it. So those are the things that are going through my mind. Purchase price, closing costs, repairs. Okay, if I'm going to rent this out, what can I rent that property out for, and how does it cash flow? Or if I'm going to flip this property, what is my after repair value? I really like that house because it's in a very diverse neighborhood. You have stuff in there for $115,000 and you've got stuff in there for $290,000. The question is, could I renovate that whole house and improve its value to be in that range? Now, half of the renovation with that property is demolition. Half of your value improvement with that property is demolition. I'm serious. You can tear down a lot of that stuff and the value is going to go up. I'm not kidding. Tear down to improve your value. Those are the things that are going through my mind. Those are the things. The front of the house was brick, and it was very durable, in very good shape. The back of the house looks like it was put together by, by who?
Cardboard.
Well, okay, by cardboard and the Keebler elves or something like that. I don't know, but it wasn't done very well. Okay. So it had the square footage. When I walked in, I was like, wow, this is a big house. And then I walked in the back of the house, and I'm like, wow, this is a piece of crap. So a lot of the improvement with that particular asset comes in tearing it down. But I still say there's a play on that property. How many people picked that property as their presentation? 3, or one group. I like that property. Heather was trying to get me to tell what property I like the best. I like that one the best. And to be honest with you, I like Charles' property. Or is Charles here? He's not here. Good. We're going to talk about him. I like Charles's property, and I think there's great opportunity there. Charles's hurdle or challenge is time. The more time that goes without having a Section 8 tenant in there, he's spending money without a return coming back in. So if I was to, now I know Charles is using that as a learning experience, and I think there's some value in that investment as well. But I think if you're going to look at that type of project, you've got to weigh the cost of bringing in subcontractors to do that work in 30 days' time, or doing it yourself in 6 months. And then you take those holding costs into consideration. The next time he does that, he'll say, you know what, I'm going to take my knowledge, bring in subcontractors, get done with that in 30 days, fill it with Section 8 tenants, and sell it as a package. How much money did he have in that property total when he's done? Does anybody remember? 120, very good. He has 120 in that property. And I asked the real estate agent, if he fills this with Section 8 tenants, where do you think he's going to be with respect to value? What could he sell this for? And Steve said between probably the 160 and 180 range, which I thought was pretty strong. But again, it's a time thing. And then you go from right to there to the one across the street. Now, instead of him doing the work, he's going to have a subcontractor do the work in a short amount of time. You know what's the best thing about his education with that? Is how do you expect to manage a contractor on a property if you don't know what the work should be yourself? That's where he's really going to have payday on that thing. Okay? Yes?
Just to tie in on the previous property that you were talking about, I thought the same thing. You tear down the stuff in front and whatnot, that's immediate and it's costs you almost nothing to do. But where is the line, or is there a line between rehab versus demolition? Because you made a comment about the roof. I'm not sure that the trusses on that place are completely destroyed. And redoing the roof, $8,000, redoing trusses, unbelievable. Totally different story. So how would you know where to stop or start?
What's your first name? Dave?
Mike.
Dave, right? It's Dave, right. Dale. I keep wanting to call you Dave, but Dale. It's one letter off, man. Give me a break. So, Dale, first of all, did you steal my shirt from yesterday?
I was thinking about it. That's a good looking shirt, but no, this has no right.
Okay, all right. That was my shirt I was wearing yesterday. I just want to make sure you're not wearing other clothes of mine. Dale's question is this. He's saying he's not sure the trusses are good in that. You don't worry about that right now. You worry about that in your due diligence. I'm still going to hire an inspector to go through that house. I'm still going to hire an inspector. You won't know that until you get up in the attic and start looking at, all the things, among others. I believe in the idea of hiring a contractor or an inspector to go through that property. I think it's very, very important. You've got to rely on your team. You've got to put yourself in a position, especially with you being in Canada. You've got to have your inspector. You've got to rely on your attorney if they're putting contracts together in Arizona. You've got to rely on your team. You can't be there. You can't do everything yourself. So I would worry about that scenario at that stage, the due diligence phase. Remember, at the beginning, you're not so concerned with every detail. Remember the point I made 2 days ago? Everything doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to know everything before you put in an offer. You're going to save that for your due diligence time. If you wait to know every single aspect or every bit of information about a property, you won't put in an offer. You won't even take action. Does that make sense? Okay. Gilbert.
But it takes 50 offers to get one approved. You pay inspectors $400 on 50 properties, that's 20 grand.
I'm not asking you to pay. You're making 50 offers to get one approved. You're only going to pay an inspector on the one you have approved, not on 50 offers. You're only hiring an inspector to go through that property when you have it under contract.
But it's not approved.
It is approved. You have it under contract, the seller signed, you've signed, you hire one inspector for that. You don't hire him for all 50. I'm not asking you to spend money like that. Subject to inspection. You good?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know who your coach is. Oh, it's me. Anyway, just kidding. Everybody got that though? Okay? All right. Yes. Okay.
And it's one of the realtors that we were working with, we put in an offer, it got accepted, but then after doing some due diligence, we realized that the offer, once all of the estimates for rehab came in, it didn't work anymore. And the realtor said to us, be careful how many times you do that and pull out of offers, you'll get a bad reputation. Like how,
By the way, we may know their name.
yeah, I
Yeah.
have the bad reputation. I don't, high school is catching up with
Right.
me. But anyway, my point or my question is that, is there any validity in that statement? Because, I mean, I'm not going to spend money that is coming from a private investor just to
Well,
have a property.
Okay, her question is, she put an offer in on a property, they went through their due diligence, and they found some aspects of the deal that they didn't like, be it the repair costs were too high or something. You have the right to get out of that contract based on the fact that you have an inspection contingency in that contract. So what your agent was telling you when she said, or he said, she said, be careful, you don't want to do that too many times because you'll get a bad reputation. I think what she's talking about there is frivolous offers. I don't think you want to make frivolous offers in any particular environment or market that you're working in, but real offers that get accepted and that you have a contingency in your contract to get an inspection on the property. When those costs are too high or maybe the work isn't what you expected it to be, you have the right to get out of that contract.
It was exponentially too high and there were permit issues.
Right.
They had done
Same.
work without
Right.
permits.
So because of that, you can exercise your right to get out of that contract based on that contingency. I don't think you or Marco are going to be the type of people that are just going to do that over and over and over again. So I think what she was talking about was frivolous offers. You got to remember, there's a lot of people coming in to the Arizona market, Florida market, and elsewhere, where they're just putting in frivolous offers. Either they're lowballing or they're just not real serious about it. And so I think what the agent was trying to do is not so much target you for that, but just kind of make an observation. And maybe she didn't know you that well at that point or something like that, but I think she was probably referring to, more frivolous offers with that. Okay, really good question. Yes? Yeah, he's he's making the point that she might have been upset because her commission has just gone right out the door, and, saying that to you as well. I don't know the situation, so that may or may not have been the case, but
At the same time, that would be the only commission she's getting from us, rather than the next 50 properties in the lot.
yeah, so now Marco's countering to that. Now we're playing tennis a little bit here. That's the only commission she was going to get, as opposed to the next 50 that they're going to put an offer in on. Okay, so let's continue here. The inspection, hopefully not rejection, but the reason that you have an inspection is it's part of your due diligence. Due diligence is studying of the investment. And there's several ways that you're going to study the investment once you have it under contract. You are going to study the investment based on the financials of it. So remember yesterday when we were talking about financial statements, income and expenses, assets and liabilities. You've got two sides there. You want to study the financial side of the investment. You also want to study the physical side of the investment, the exterior and the interior. Like I talked about earlier, when I go to a property, exterior, I'm looking at how the water's being directed away from the property, if it's being directed away from the property. I'm looking at some of the problems currently that may cause, and maybe in the future that may cause. All of those issues physically translate into something financially, either right now that is affecting the income and expenses, or later down the line that may be affecting the asset, maybe the liability of that. So you've got to take all that into consideration when you're doing your due diligence on the property. Your inspection really needs to be handled in a certain couple of ways. Now, the way I do it and the way you should do it. I don't want to tell you that my way is the best way, even though it is, but no. But I think you need to come up with your own style. My style is, initially I'll go to the property, or at least have my team go to the property, and I want them to look at the property through my eyes. What's very interesting in today's world is you could take your cell phone, you could have an iPad and walk through a property, or maybe not you, but one of your team members walk through a property and give you a virtual tour. Is anybody doing that right now? Okay, Penny, you are? Your agent does that for you? That's right, we talked about that. Marco had to slow her down when she was walking through the unit. But it's a great way to virtually walk through a unit and get an original assessment physically as to what's going on. So that's the first step I would suggest doing. The second step, if you can, and not all cases, but you're buying an investment, and it's probably one of the larger purchases you're going to make in your life. I would recommend, if you can, not in all cases, and I want to respect your budgets and your time schedules, but I would recommend going there. I would recommend spending time with that investment and seeing it physically for yourself. I know some advice is given to buy things that you never see, but I'm saying if you can afford the time and afford the travel cost and things, I would really recommend going to the property and putting eyes on it. And I don't think you get the same knowledge by looking at it over the computer. Okay, so that would be number 2 as a recommendation. But again, I want to respect your time and respect your budgets with that. Number 3, I think after you get the property under contract, I believe you should get a professional to go through that and make sure that they're examining things like air conditioning units, furnaces, the structure itself, the roof, the landscaping, interior, carpet, paint, walls, do all the windows work? You really need to know that stuff if you're looking to put in a Section 8 tenant or get it FHA compliant. You really need to make sure that you're adhering to those standards. Okay, really important. Questions with that, with inspections on that? No? Yes? Mhm. Sometimes they're a la carte. You know, I'm not used to that. Property inspectors that I've have experience with are very thorough. As a matter of fact, they may be too thorough. So I'm not sure who you use, but I would really recommend getting a reliable, someone that's got experience, someone's got, you know, some not work ethic, but track record, but references that you could get. Usually property inspectors, if they're in that field, they're very, very thorough. Like I said, almost too thorough. So I'm not sure who you used, but I would maybe go back and find an appropriate one. If you do like a Google search, by the way, they have to be licensed. So you want to make sure that they're also licensed appropriately. But you might find that some of their services are a la carte. You know, a property inspection on a single family house here in the valley is probably going to cost you anywhere from, you know, $300 to $500, somewhere there, somewhere around that neighborhood. By the way, how many bids did you get on that? You just got one? I'd recommend getting at least 3 because then you can compare 3 different ones, and I think it would give you a lot of value in getting 3 quotes for that. Probably at least 3 quotes on all of the work that you're going to do. Okay? Okay. So you're kind of like making Jell-O. You get an idea in your head of what the numbers are initially when you're either at the property or maybe your agent is there at the property. And what you're doing by sending your team there or sending your property inspector there or your contractors there is confirming. You're confirming what you found out initially. And then, like with Jell-O, I would reconfirm. Now, have you ever, you know, you guys have made Jell-O before, right? And it gets to the point where it's you can look at it and it looks solid, but you really don't know until you kind of stick your finger at it or a fork or something like that. That's kind of what I want you to do with your inspector or with your contractors. And then I want you to do it again to really make sure. And then with that report that you get, that is going to establish what your time frame is. Okay? That report, by the way, on a single family house is probably going to be 40 pages long, give or take. Those 40 pages you're going to then send out to your subcontractors to get bids on, at least 3 bids. And those bids should have identified a time frame for the renovations or repairs or rehabs for each one of those items. That's going to go into your master schedule of the whole property. So you can really, at this point, lay out the time frame of when those renovations are going to be done or repairs or rehabbing is going to be done. Then you can say, on that date, I can mark it for a renter or market it for sale. And then you can say, you know, usually properties are on that price point. In this particular market, the average days on market are X. You're going to take the average days on market, build it into your time frame and into your budget, and there you go. You're rolling out a game plan for that property. But I think it really starts with that inspection. That's when you really can confirm and reconfirm and establish that time frame. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So let's talk about money makers that sizzle very quickly before we break. Okay. Number 1, shutters. Now, depending on the look and style of the house, shutters are a great way to give color contrast to a house. Now, here in the valley, you'll notice that all of the properties, sometimes you'll go into a neighborhood and they all look alike, and they've got that same color scheme on each one of them. Is there a way that you can set your property out differently that would compare it to other properties of higher of value? Shutters may be a way that you could do that. Lock sets. I know this sounds kind of crazy, but the lock set in the door is the first thing a prospective buyer is going to look at. It's the first thing they're probably going to touch when they go into a home. Make sure that that is new. You might be able to get a fancier lock set on the front door, and remember, first impressions are huge. So that would be something that I think you should also look at. Along with the lock set, to make the door stand out, maybe a kick plate. A kick plate would be at the bottom of the door. It's usually 8 to 10 inches thick or tall, and it goes across the whole bottom of the door. It's another way to add possibly a color contrast or have that door stand out as that prospective buyer or renter goes to that door, okay? Fences. Fences are a great way to outline definition of a property. It's a great way to add privacy. As remember, the buyers are buying on emotion and renters are renting on emotion. And if they can picture in their minds their kids playing safely in the backyard, or maybe a dog running safely in the backyard, or a cat, maybe cat, not a cat, but you get my point, running safely in the backyard within a fenced yard, it may go a long way. Crown molding. Now this is one of my favorites. Crown molding, you can buy at Home Depot, Lowe's, any of that, for a pretty inexpensive price per linear foot. So you might be able to crown mold the whole entryway, the living room, maybe the family room. You don't have to do every room, but do some rooms that make an impression. As you walk into the home, the entryway, or the great room, as you want to call it, or maybe the living room, family room, you might be able to add crown molding, paint that crown molding like semi-gloss white, and maybe the walls a different color so you've got some contrast there. But make sure you highlight that crown molding. It gives the effect of a little richer, a little higher end for either the renter or the person coming in to buy it. It makes a lot of difference. Yes?
The bigger they are, the more expensive they are. So you take, a sort of a small one, and then you get another one up higher, and then you paint the wall in between, so it looks like you've got a nice big baseboard next to it.
So you double up on the baseboard to make it look bigger, and then you paint the wall in between. Very good. Yes? You sound like an electrician. Are you? Oh, you are. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, it's also a great way to hide wiring that you want to use. Very good. Shower head. I know this doesn't seem like a big deal, but when I have renovated homes and rehabbed homes, when they walk into a bathroom, remember, bathrooms and kitchens drive emotion. And when they walk into a bathroom, and look at the shower, if they've got one of those flat shower heads on it, they always comment on that. People will buy a house because of the shower head. And if you think I'm kidding, try it out. They will buy a house because of the shower head. And it's a little bit of an investment, but I think it really goes a long way. Remember those two rooms, kitchens and bathrooms, drive emotion. Very important. Faux paint. Painting in general are great ways to make an average house look better than average, or make a house separate itself from its competition. It's a great way to establish a richer presence with the house, both with a person that's going to buy it and a person that's going to rent it. These all seem like very little things. Look at, if you added all these up, with the exception of maybe the fence, they're all relatively inexpensive items to make your house a little bit different. I'm telling you, in your cookie cutter houses, the 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 square foot houses, single levels here, putting these things on, you can make a quick $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. It really goes a long way, and it separates your house from another one. So I want you to keep those things in mind. We're going to take one question, and then we're going to go to break. With what? Okay, lighting in general, which we haven't talked about yet, but we're going to talk about in the future, in a little bit here. Lighting is also a really good, inexpensive way to create a dramatic difference. And we're going to talk about lighting in a little bit more detail when we get back. But yes, we're going to talk about rope lighting and landscape lighting and things like that, okay?